The gloves came off at the first Conservative debate last Thursday. The legacy media and the Laurentian elites, they cried foul and they clutched their pearls. I'll give you an inside scoop on what really happened. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. And thank you to everyone who came out to Ottawa for the Canada Strong and Free conference over the weekend. I had the great pleasure of moderating the first Conservative debate, which happened on Thursday night. And we're going to spend the whole show going through the debate, talking about the highlights and the lowlights, and then, of course, responding to the over-the-top media reaction to it. But first, I just wanted to say to everyone who was at the event, we had so many people coming up to us at the True North booth. We had myself and Andrew were both filming content live from the floor of the convention. It was so great. There was so much energy. It was wonderful just to be around sort of conservative activists, political activists, and just people. It's been a long time since we were able to gather together in person. For us at True North, we had so much, just overwhelming response from the audience. People saying that they watch our podcast, that they enjoy our news, that they love our website, that they follow us on social media. And it was really just great to connect with the people who watch our shows, who consume our content. Really great to meet so many different people from all over the country, so many different walks of life, so many people that frankly you don't necessarily expect to be consumers of independent media or conservative media just because of their profession, where they're from. But there was really truly a diverse group of people who we met. And for me personally, not just at the convention, I was just walking around the streets in Ottawa, going through my hotel, and I would get stopped and recognized by people who appreciated our content when it came to the trucker convoy, telling the other side of the story. I had one young gentleman who is from Quebec, and he said that ever since the Freedom Convoy, he hasn't been able to trust the CBC. He hasn't watched the CBC at all, and that he exclusively gets his news from True North. So it's wonderful to hear, and it's great to know that our organization is growing, that we're reaching more and more Canadians, and that we're really having an impact. So thank you so much again to everyone out there who is watching the show, sharing the podcast, sharing the program, helping to promote the work that we do here at True North. We really, really appreciate it. It's really exciting to be sort of on the front lines of this cultural battle, pushing back against the legacy media. And frankly, again, just being invited to host and moderate this debate. Of course, it was the first opportunity for the Conservative candidates to get on stage together. There's sort of been a lot of war of words and fighting between the various candidates, amongst the candidates, and this was the first chance to have them all on the stage together, and it was really fun to put that together. So I co-moderated the debate alongside Jamil Javani. Jamil is a lawyer and a writer, and he is the incoming president of that organization, Canada Strong and Free. The organization used to be called the Manning Center. They've been putting on this huge conference in Ottawa every year for the last, I don't know, maybe 14, 15 years. And it really is a big gathering of sort of small C and big C conservatives. And so Jamil is about to take over. They had the two of us moderate it, and we were given complete free range in terms of how we were organizing the debate, the questions, the themes. We got to basically draw it up from scratch. And so my personal goal as moderator, I think I had 3 goals in putting together this debate and how I wanted it organized. First, I wanted to make sure that there was an open flow, an open exchange of ideas. I really wanted the candidates to be able to talk to each other, have a debate, put their ideas out, see the contrasts, see where they stood, see how they handled themselves in front of an audience, in front of this live audience. I think there was 800 or 1,000 people in the room watching this thing live. And so really you're putting them to the test in terms of their ability to articulate themselves, their ability to defend themselves, and their ability to connect to an audience, connect to Canadians. So open exchange of ideas. Second, of course, it's television. You want to make it entertaining. You want to make sure it's fun. It's good to watch. It's not boring. So many of these debates, especially in Canadian politics, they're just so boring. They basically just feature a bunch of people patting each other on the back, rubbing each other's shoulders, and agreeing with each other. We really wanted, again, to draw out the contrasts, make it entertaining, make sure that there's some contrast so that you can see where the candidates stand on the various issues, and again, entertaining. And then the other thing that I wanted to do personally was to highlight the individual weaknesses or threats of each candidate, because one of the things that continues to happen on the Conservative side of the aisle is that we get these leaders, right? We had Andrew Scheer after Harper, and then we had Erin O'Toole, and you got the feeling that they really hadn't been properly vetted by the time the election rolled around. With Andrew Scheer, he was sort of presented as a moderate, as a moderate young alternative sort of in Harper's footsteps. And people didn't really know the extent of his social conservative Christian views. And he didn't really have a good answer and a good response to them. He hadn't been tested. He hadn't been pushed on that. And that became a weakness. And I think that a lot of that had to do with the legacy media and the way that they demonized him, the way that they sort of tore him apart and criticized him for his Christian values. But he clearly hadn't had the opportunity to really defend those. And I think that had he done that throughout the conservative leadership campaign back in 2017, he might have been better prepared during the 2019 election. And then we saw something similar happen with Aaron O'Toole, where, as you recall, when he was running for leader, he ran as a true blue, as a conservative, as a sort of more grassroots individual. He was going to defund the CBC. He was going to overturn Trudeau's gun ban. He was going to bring in more options for a mixed healthcare system. He had all of these platform pieces. He was going to get rid of the carbon tax, and he was opposed to carbon tax. And then, of course, when he was running for leader of the country, in the general election, he had a totally different worldview. He was like a different candidate. He flip-flopped, in my view, in an unethical way. And again, that was exposed because he didn't face enough pressure and criticism during the time where he was running for leader. So my goal as moderator was to highlight the individual weaknesses of each candidate to see how they would respond. And that was why there was one point in the debate where myself and Jamil, we asked each candidate a really tough question, a tough, personal, individualized question that we thought was something that was their weakness, their Achilles heel, that would play out throughout the course of the election. And so we asked Pierre about whether his support for the trucker convoy was going to be a liability. We asked Leslyn Lewis to defend her views on abortion and gay marriage and how she would handle that in an election. Roman Baber, who is an independent Ontario MPP, he was very opposed to the COVID policies and COVID lockdowns. He actually left Doug Ford's Progressive Conservative caucus in Ontario because he was so morally and just opposed. He was completely opposed on a policy level, on a moral level, to Doug Ford's lockdowns and his measures against COVID. So we asked him, how would Canadians trust you to become Prime Minister, and how would you handle the next public health crisis? For Jean Charest, he was a former Liberal Premier of Quebec, and there's a lot of murmuring and criticism in the party that he isn't really conservative, that he's just kind of coming in as a sort of blue Liberal or a red Tory to try to take the party in a new direction. So the question to him was, are you really conservative, and how would you keep this party together? And then Scott Aitchison, who is a Ontario MP, he sort of fits the same model as Aaron O'Toole, just in that he's a sort of quintessential Ontario moderate. So we asked him how he would expect to have any different result than what Aaron O'Toole just had, because we just had an Ontario moderate and the Conservatives didn't win. So how would he expect to do anyway? So that was sort of the rationale behind the way that we set up the debate and what we were trying to get out of it. And I just want to say, I was really happy with it. I thought the debate was fun. I thought it was lively. I thought it was entertaining. There was some really great moments in the debate. And we put together a little montage here of some of my own personal favorite moments of the debate. Again, moments where the candidates were able to contrast their views with one of the other candidates on the stage, an opportunity for them to really kind of expose what they think the weaknesses of their fellow candidates are. And again, that's so important in a leadership debate and a leadership review, because you're trying to determine, these things are all going to come out, right? They're all going to come out in the media. They're all going to come out by the Liberals in the next election. We might as well deal with it all now, get it all out on the table, find out exactly where all the various candidates stand. And that is the point. That is the purpose of a debate. And I think that was what was accomplished here. So here is a quick montage of some of our favorite moments from Thursday night's debate.
I think that in 2020, Canadians were not concerned about the barbaric snitch line. What they were concerned about is the snitch line on your neighbor if they had a friend over, or a snitch line about a church if they wanted to congregate. That is un-Canadian. I come from the former Soviet Union. I know what democracy is all about, and I know how precious our democracy is. And the fact that the conservative movement failed to stand up for democracy is something that is going to remain with us for a generation.
It's among the loudest voices.
That you were not one of the loudest voices, Mr. Poilievre. You were not one of the loudest voices. In fact, you did not speak up until it was convenient.
Actually, that is not true, Madam Lewis.
You did not even go to the trucker protest. You actually went and you took a picture in your neighborhood at a local stop.
Let's hear from
you
Mr.
did not
Poilievre,
speak up for the truckers, and you did not speak up the loudest, Mr. Poilievre.
Now, Mr. Charest learned about the trucker convoy on CBC, like other Liberals, and he misrepresented them. He believes that I should be censored. He believes I should be canceled from this leadership race and disqualified, in his words, because I don't share his Liberal viewpoint. That is the kind of cancel culture and censorship you would expect from Justin Trudeau, but instead we're getting it from this Liberal on this stage.
You know, this whole situation with the vaccine mandates, the truckers' convoy, never should have happened in the first place. Leadership would have engaged people. It should never have happened in the first place. And the fact of the matter is this. Justin Trudeau used vaccines and vaccine status to divide Canadians in a corrosive, disgusting political display to win votes. And what we cannot do as a party is continue with the divisive, polarizing rhetoric that Justin Trudeau has been using for 7 years. It's disgusting. It's ripping our country apart. It's why I'm running.
Mr. Charest, how much money did you get from Huawei when you were working for them, either directly or indirectly? Just the number, please. How much? Just the number.
I agree with Scott. This mess that we witnessed is the fault of Mr. Trudeau. But Mr. Poilievre, during that period, supported an illegal blockade. You cannot make laws and break laws and then say I will make laws for other people. I'm sorry, but that is a question of basic foundation and principle in my life.
What do you say to the large number of conservatives and Canadians who simply don't want to have a debate about abortion?
I think it's very important that in a free and democratic society, we are free to debate any issue. And I tell people I am pro-life. Many of my friends are pro-choice. And we have healthy discussions about the future. And there is so much that we agree on. And we need to come together as a society to determine that we can work out things, even controversial things like abortion. I still don't know where these gentlemen stand on this issue. I don't know whether they're pro-life or pro-choice. And the media will hound them. For example, Mr. Pierre Poilievre has ran from the media the last few days because he doesn't want to declare whether he's pro-life or pro-choice.
So I'm wondering if you can set the record straight. Are you a conservative?
Thank you very much. And Roman, thank you for your comments. And Leslyn, I have a deep respect for the position that you hold on the issue of abortion. And I want to say a word about social conservatives tonight, because we may not agree on all issues, but who are the people who call themselves social conservatives? And I'm not a hyphenated conservative. But who are they if not people who have a faith-based life, believe in their families and their communities? Sounds like pretty good people to me. And they are part of our family, and they will always be part of our family, and they need to be respected.
CBC News is no longer news. It's a communications arm for Justin Trudeau. How can media objectively cover the government when the government signs their paycheck? It's utterly impossible. You know, I was born in the Soviet Union. There was a newspaper called Pravda, and Pravda means truth. And I see no difference between what we're seeing in state-run funding. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to defund the CBC. I'm going to end all subsidies and bailouts, but I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to end the advertising relationship that government has with media.
Okay, so those were some of the very best moments of the night, some of the best moments of the debate. Now I want to talk about the absolute worst part of the debate, the worst moments, which of course were the legacy media's reaction to it. Lots of liberals, lots of people on the left, clutching their pearls, feigning outrage, even some conservatives throwing fellow conservatives under the bus because they just didn't like the lack of respect, the fact that people were actually debating ideas. That was just unconscionable to so many. So first I want to discuss Roman Baber. I mean, he really did have the support of a lot of people in the room. He had some great lines, and this was a great line when he said that the CBC was like Pravda. Well, apparently that didn't sit well with David Akin over at Global News, member of the Parliamentary Press Gallery. He feels himself that he feels that he is the arbiter of truth and that he is in the position to fact check the candidates and say whether they're right or wrong. And so Straight News reporter David Akin says this: "Oh, good Lord, Roman Baber, the CBC equals Pravda? No. No, it doesn't. Okay, so here we have this state-funded media organization. Every time there's an election, Justin Trudeau promises more money to them, and in return, they give Justin Trudeau perfectly glowing coverage. They never dwell on his scandals. They don't ask him tough questions. They forgive him for everything, and they're incredibly hard on his opposition. But no, that's nothing like a propaganda news agency, according to David Akin. Well, Andrew Scheer, the former leader of the Conservative Party, punches right back and says this: "You're right. Pravda never pretended to be independent." So Andrew Scheer, unrestrained there on social media, pushing back against the legacy media. It is just so amusing how defensive the media get over this claim, over Conservatives complaining about the way that the CBC operates, the coverage that they get, because it's obviously propaganda. It is obviously incredibly biased. Everybody knows that. It's an open secret in this country. Hence my experiences in Ottawa, people bumping into me saying that they don't watch the CBC anymore. Not conservative activists, just regular people saying that, and the media just can't get over it. They can't come to terms with the fact that they have lost so much credibility in the eyes of mainstream Canadians and the Canadian public that they're just grasping for straws. And Twitter gives us sort of a real-time stream of consciousness of how they react to that. It is pretty amusing, if I do say so myself. And now what else was amusing was hearing the same brain trust in the media, the elites, the Laurentian elites, Liberals, and the left in the media talking about who won the debate. Well, many of them said that it wasn't any of the individuals who were actually debating on the stage. The people who did say that there was a winner, a lot of them went with Scott Aitchison, which is interesting because a lot of people in the room thought that he was sort of on the underwhelming side. A lot of Liberal observers said that Scott Aitchison won. But some went so far as to say that Patrick Brown, the only individual who didn't bother showing up to the debate, that he, in fact, won the debate. Yes, that is right. People on the left, Liberals and journalists, were saying that Patrick Brown won for not attending. So here is NDP strategist Brian Topp saying just that. Conservatives hope that nobody watched the debate. Takes aim at Poilievre and applauds Patrick Brown for not attending. Peter MacKay, likewise, who is a red Tory in the Conservative Party, he ran for leader last time and lost, and he didn't bother to run again this time. He didn't bother to run as an MP after he lost. He said this: "When you see some of the nasty exchanges, I don't think it bodes well. It's off-putting." Again, these sort of red Tories would rather us just never talk about the issues that matter. They would rather us never talk about the areas where we disagree, to just sort of pretend that we all agree about everything and not talk about the issues, so that it comes across as more gentlemanly. I think this is a very wrong and outdated view of politics. Likewise, Brian Lilley over at the Toronto Sun said that the Conservative leadership debate was a poor performance. He said it was angry, confrontational, and at times bitter. Are some of the ways you could describe the performances. It wasn't the fault of the organizers, the Canada Strong and Free Network, for putting together a debate that allowed for a free exchange of ideas. The problem is what the candidates were saying. It's hard to say if anyone won, though I would say that Poilievre and Lewis both lost. And then he said the next debate is May 11th in Edmonton, and he hopes for some better performances then. Again, I don't quite understand. I don't agree with Brian Lilley here, because when he says better performances, does that he just mean like more agreement, more gentlemanliness? Like, I think the idea of a debate is to debate ideas. You want to see the candidates pushing back, calling each other out, saying the weaknesses of the other candidate, not just getting up there and saying, the Conservatives are so great, we all agree. It's like, no, conservatism is a big tent. There's lots of different directions the party can go in depending on who wins and who's leader, and we want to be able to judge that. So I don't understand this take, and I don't think a boring debate is a better debate. I think a boring debate is a worse debate. Likewise, this website Toronto.com says eye roll generating political theater. Patrick Brown explains his decision to skip the Conservative debate. So he's quoted as saying this: "Instead of participating in yesterday's eye-roll generating political theater, I was on the ground in Atlantic Canada. The support I've already received from my campaign in Atlantic Canada has been amazing. I was working all week building the party in areas my opponents have very little connectivity." So Patrick Brown patting himself on the back and applauding himself for being too afraid to come to the debate, not wanting to participate in that exchange of ideas, not wanting to be called out by his fellow candidates for the very, very many flaws that he has. And instead, he's going to, my guess is, very small rooms out in the Maritimes talking to small groups of people. Patrick Brown was not the winner of the debate. I think it looks very childish and very mature and very, frankly, scared that he didn't come because he didn't want to have to defend his record, which I wouldn't want to have to defend his record either. Next, from the Globe and Mail, we have Campbell Clark, who writes that the Conservative leadership debate was more about who supported the trucker convoy. So apparently it's very controversial in the liberal media world that we were talking about the trucker convoy. He said there were the traditional red meat conservative issues, talking from pipelines to defunding the CBC, at the debate organized by the conservative organization Canada Strong and Free. But in the first leadership campaign debate, candidates seemed to position themselves notably around a newer question. What were you doing during the trucker convoy? That's a correct take. I don't like the underlying sort of sneering that this is like something awful that conservatives shouldn't be talking about. Again, one of my favorite parts of the debate was when Roman Baber called out the federal Conservative Party for not doing enough to oppose the restrictions that came down during COVID, talking about all of the horrible consequences, be it in our healthcare system, in our schools, to young people, all of just the terrible impacts of these heavy-handed pandemic and lockdowns. And then you saw Leslyn Lewis jump in and push back against Pierre, saying that he didn't really support the truckers, that he was filming videos from his backyard or something like that. And I think that's like a really interesting, nuanced position, because in the media, they just paint Pierre as this big supporter of the truckers, and yet to many conservatives, he wasn't doing enough. And so you saw this sort of dichotomy that you wouldn't see in the legacy media. I think that was great that was put out there. And again, the fact that the media is like shaking their head and looking down their noses at the Conservative Party for this shows just how out of touch the media is with the issues that Canadians care about. Next, we had Susan Delacourt over at the Toronto Star saying, progressives like Jean Charest are the new fringe in today's angry Conservative Party. I won't even bother going through some of her lines because it's just, obviously she hates conservatives. So I don't know why she bothers to come to conservative events, come to conservative debates, just to write pieces about how much she hates conservatives. It's like, okay, we know that. We already know that. Next, Catherine McKenna, who is a former Liberal cabinet minister. On Twitter, she writes this. Apparently, there was a Conservative leadership debate where candidates spent their time fighting over who most supported illegal blockades, conspiracies, and opposed vaccine mandates and the media, while avoiding climate change, Canada-US, Ukraine, economy, and healthcare. Good luck with that. So Catherine McKenna, first of all, she apparently didn't watch, she's admitting that she didn't watch the debate because she said apparently there was a leadership debate, which implies that she herself didn't watch it. And then she goes on to say that she knows exactly what the content was and what topics were and were not covered. First of all, there was nothing illegal about the protest in Ottawa. And when you talk about the truckers, typically you're not talking about the handful of people who blocked a border for a couple of days. You're talking about the thousands of people who were in Ottawa and Parliament Hill who were doing nothing illegally. The only talk about conspiracies was sort of an interesting debate exchange that happened later in the debate between Leslyn Lewis and Aitchison, where they were kind of dancing around the issue of whether or not there were conspiracies floating around the Conservative Party, and then, yes, opposing vaccine mandates because they were horrible and ineffective for our country. And then she claims that we didn't talk about climate change, Canada, US, Ukraine, economy, or healthcare. Well, that's completely false because we talked about every single one of those issues. We talked about climate. One of the questions that we had was, how are you going to deal with Quebec and their opposition to oil and gas when so many people now want to export oil and gas in the context of Ukraine. We talked about Ukraine because of how it exposed the need for Canadians to export our oil and gas. We talked about Canada-US relations. We talked about the economy. We had a specific question about healthcare. So Catherine McKenna, you don't know what you're talking about. You didn't watch the debate. We talked about all those issues, but go ahead and virtue signal on Twitter over there when you didn't even watch the debate. Next, we had Warren Kinsella. He said, out last night, heard some conservative friends that People's Party Pierre Poilievre was repellent last night. Anyone else see the debate? So another Liberal who didn't bother to watch the debate, but yet had lots and lots of opinions. And, if the best they can do is call Pierre Poilievre People's Party Pierre, that's pretty lame, and good luck with that. good luck with that. So the next Conservative debate will happen this Wednesday, May 11th in Edmonton. And I'll just say one more tidbit from the debate. So while we're organizing, while we're coming up with the questions, there's so many questions that you could ask these candidates, and there's so many topics that we wanted to cover. But of course, we were limited. It was 90 minutes, and we didn't want to try to squeeze too much into it. We wanted to leave lots of time for the candidates to have crosstalk, have their debate, and get their platforms out. And so one of the topics we didn't cover as much as we would have liked to were more issues concerning Western Canada, Western Canadian issues, oil and gas, pipelines, all that kind of stuff. We did talk about it a little bit, but we didn't talk about it that much. And part of the reason why was because I was thinking, the next debate next week is in Alberta. They're going to talk about all those issues in Alberta. But then we learned that this debate is moderated by none other than Tom Clark, who is a former legacy media journalist from Central Canada. He's a Laurentian elite. And not just that, he was a longtime Global News host. You may remember this very embarrassing interview that he did with Justin Trudeau, where he asked Justin Trudeau, they were in a plane together, and he asked Justin Trudeau apparently the question that all Canadians have been dying to know, which is something about what kind of shampoo Justin Trudeau uses. No, I'm not making this up. This is literally the question that Tom Clark asked of Justin Trudeau. So that's the guy that's moderating the debate. I don't have a lot of hope that he's going to ask questions that resonate with Western Canadians and with the Conservative base out there. Ezra Levant over at Rebel, he tweeted this: bizarre, the next Conservative debate is in Edmonton, but apparently there's no one in Alberta good enough to moderate it, so the party is flying in an Ottawa lobbyist named Tom Clark to chair it. Clark is a Liberal media party type who famously asked Trudeau what shampoo he uses. Well, Clark was a longtime host over on Global News, but apparently he's not a journalist anymore. He is a lobbyist. He's a senior advisor at Global Public Affairs. And Paul Vieira, who writes for the Wall Street Journal in Canada, he tweeted this back in June 2017. Former CTV and Global journalist Tom Clark to help the Liberal government vet candidates to sit on the board of the CBC. So he's a lobbyist who gets appointed and gets jobs through the Liberal government. And this is the guy that they have moderating the next debate. Well, that makes me even more fortunate and grateful that I was able to participate in the first debate, because it might be the only one that reflects what the grassroots of the Conservative movement and the Conservative Party really care about, despite what the legacy media complain and clutch their pearls and say that they really don't like the things that we talked about. I think that we covered a lot of really good ground, and I'm happy with the way that the debate turned out. All right, thank you so much for watching. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show.